The MiniMansioneerers and the Emerging Humanoids. Chapter 5. Molly Buttons had been at her friend's house, Jaden Marshall, watching the Robo Kit perform his Robo Dance with Jaden, and watching a whole variety of different simulated Robo dances, and then a whole variety of different Robo moves, different Robo exercises that she watched for at length, and then had discussed what the potential benefits were that he'd been receiving. Well, I can't ever imagine ever doing it myself, but it's your choice, it's your room, it's your body, and it's your life, it's your decision. So I wouldn't choose to do it personally, said Molly Buttons, but I can understand why you might, and that's, I respect your choice, even if I don't understand it, and I don't get it fully, but I can understand that you might want to, and it's your choice. I'm not going to judge you for it or anything. I don't know the reasons fully, trailed off Molly Buttons. Well, if you were very ill and you were really injured and couldn't go out and you didn't have others to visit and you were really alone like me, maybe you'd feel the same. You know, it's different for you, Molly. You've got your sons. If you were ill, they'd look after you, you know? Molly had thought this over. Yes, she nodded. It was perhaps different, but she was thinking it over herself. Would they, though? She asked herself. Not sure, really. Well, yeah, in an emergency, for a short time, of course they would, she said finally, as almost trying to reassure and defend her sons after considering the accusation potentially against them. Of course they'd look after me, and I'm sorry, I don't know what it's like to be alone and not have any of that support you needed if you were that ill, she then had conceded. I wouldn't expect my sons to care for me long term. No, they've got their own lives to lead, partners, jobs, children of their own one day, if I ever got ill when I was older, speculated Molly. I don't know. Well, if I ever needed robo for therapy support, that's something, I suppose if I couldn't get a physiotherapist, and I could potentially use it for that, yes, if I ever got ill or injured or something. Well, if I ever felt bad, and I lost contact with others, yes, okay, in those conditions I would consider it. But it's sad, I've got my aunt would do it for me. She comes around and cares, and a few other neighbour friends too. I don't know that I would depend on a robot to actually do it, but I can understand if you had to, and I do get that. I understand it. If you had no one else there, and it was something that was necessary, you found useful, yes, I get that, said Molly. I'm sorry, I can see why you'd want one, without the family around. I do get that. Without friends, that you could see that often. I just still think, though, it'd be better if you could find a person to visit, and also other people when you're able to go out, to be around other people. It's a shame you couldn't have hired your own personal assistant or something, or even a private dancer. A person would still be better for all that money, Why couldn't you have a personal assistant rather than, a personal humanoid? Asked Molly. And then Jaden had pondered his answers a long time, before then saying that was all the grief and being alone so long. He'd been alone a long time, in fact, so he wasn't really that familiar or used to having strangers visiting him that he didn't know. But especially because he'd lost contact with so many close friends and family over the years. And then with the injury recently, being inside a longer time on his own, then he was just out of contact with others so long, and also with the grief itself, being out of contact with others, being alone so long, and in a lot of pain. He just wasn't sure that he could be around others, strangers, however well meant they were, the personal assistants, with unpredictable behaviours that could just be too much. He wasn't sure about it until he was a lot better. And then he felt maybe he would consider doing it then. He wanted to see other people when he went out, when he was socially well enough to do so, to dance or to chat okay, and to move better, to move well. Whatever limitations RoboKit, the humanoid, had, even if it only simulated the dancing, the moving, all the different exercises, and even the talking sometimes, and he only did the programmed in movements, the simulated reactions, and not real reactions, however boring sometimes those could be, and predictable, or however limiting and frustrating that they were sometimes, Sometimes, it was really repetitive what he did and predictable, and sometimes even his repetitions were done at a time that was ill-suited and that could produce funny results and quite dangerous results if he was out in public in an unfamiliar, strange situation with people doing strange behaviours, that he wouldn't have any known simulated reactions programmed in him. Well, he was worried about going out with him, even if he had become a little bit predictable with him, repetitive, and a bit too ornamental. Almost it was too regimental in its repetitiveness, in its highly sophisticated but structured behaviours. Yeah, he could go out and do much more with him, but there were the fears of taking RoboKit out. Well, that's why he'd been trained and exercising with him and adapting with him at home, with it at home. Why did he really like having a robot around so much of the time, though, rather than a personal assistant that he could have afforded? That would have been less of the cost than RoboKits, the maintenance work, and then the initial costs, the huge deposit that he had to pay, even if he did one day eventually get it all back, yes. But still, it was a large cost to really give up, and it was a huge risk as well if something should happen to RoboKit, the humanoid. Surely he could have just hired out some personal assistants or some personal carer over a short time, whilst his needs were relatively great enough to justify it, and the cost would have been much lesser and much lesser risk in it too. Surely, did he have some problem around being around other people, around strangers, being so close and intimate with him? He could gradually get to know them, spend a few hours talking to them more, interviewing each other, getting to sort of read each other better, to react to each other more, to understand and learn each other's different behaviours, adapting to each other in a trialogue with each other over some hours, before really deciding what personal human assistant to go with. Molly had suggested all this, trying to usher him back towards having a personal assistant rather than a personal humanoid, and concerned at the lack of contact that he had with so many people, and that RoboKit had taken up so much of his time and energy in so many months now, and that it had developed into something beyond just the physical physiotherapy needs alone. Was there not some emotional attachment problems with people, she suspected? Or was it a robotic attachment that he had with RoboKit? That she wasn't sure about, and had asked him about it a number of times, in a repetitive fashion though, given that he'd answered differently, distracted her from the answers, tried to tail off into something else a couple of times. But finally Jaden had answered. RoboKit never stole from you. He never took something from you without you knowing it. He never lied about you. Never said anything that was really personally defamatory, hurtful in that way. Never spread rumours about you. He never got drunk, intoxicated. He never became abusive to people. He never touched anything inappropriately, not in a way that he wasn't asked to. And not in a way, he never did anything in a way that he wasn't asked to. He never had to worry about some awful shock with RoboKit. RoboKit didn't do anything or say anything around him alone in the room that was ever shocking, because he'd gotten to know RoboKit's character through the various different function programs over the months. He'd gotten to know RoboKit's character that had been programmed in a lot, huge amount, through the robo-dancing, the robo-conversations that simulated a variety of different subjective conversations, personal conversations too even, really. Because RoboKit was actually a personal character more than just a physio model, a physio simulation of a person. It was much more than that. Even the actual recordings of him, of his narrated voice itself. The narrator had actually been one of the scriptwriters, as Jaden had explained earlier, and had written up and designed, or been part of the design team, designing the actual character itself that Kit would become. And so it was really this personal character that had been created by a variety of people. Those scriptwriters had worked with the narrator himself, a group of them, a writing circle, a small group that were concentrated on the character of designing the specific things that Kit would say and do, so that the movements that the model Kit would actually make when he was moving his simulated body, his synthetic skin, synthetic bones and skin also, that would move and be flexible, that would be in sync with the actual simulated conversations also. And so that the movements that he would make, if they were gentle movements that were slow and rounded, that his speech also would be in sync to reflect that also. So that he would have smooth audios that would then be in sync to the smooth movements, to the smooth simulated dances that he could then give smooth simulated talks to during them. He could smooth simulated walk as well as smooth simulated talk. So it was a simulated walk talk and also sometimes a simulated walk song and simulated stagger song, if he could be programmed to do that, though that was much more complex. And he didn't know that he wanted him to appear as drunk in public, though he could simulate a drunken behaviour if that's something that would be desirable. If he visited a drunken corridor, a drunken unknown place in the outside realms, then yes, he would want Robot Kit then to simulate drunken behaviours that was leering to one side more, that didn't walk in a straight line so much, that zigzagged and veered off to different directions, that sloped a little, that staggered or that mulched into things, bumped into things sometimes, but only gently perhaps. Yes, he wanted him to have a gentle drunk kind of program, something installed, a kind of staggering program, perhaps. That's something that he would look into getting installed. You could have new programs installed into the specific robot that you had, into the humanoid model of whatever kind. However, the downside to that was that those new programs that could be installed into the specific humanoid character wouldn't then naturally be aligned to all the character's synchronized movements that it had already pre-installed, pre-programmed by the narrator and the scriptwriters. The narrating scriptwriters, as one of them was, and the supporting scriptwriters, as the others were too. So that sometimes if you had the new program installed to the humanoid personal character, those new programmed movements would seem out of character, different, of a different persona. He would move in a different kind of way, too rough or too smooth, too fast or too slow, speak high-pitched or low-pitched. It would be altered and different and hadn't been personalised to the specific character of that specific constructed humanoid. So, still, you could get new movements that he could do, new programs. Jaden had explained this, but those wouldn't be in sync and aligned to his earlier personalised, characterised humanoid behaviour programs. Those would appear to be something that was different. And yes, they could do a simulated talk with a new program installed while he was doing a corridor stagger perhaps, but he would still do a smooth simulated talk with that, because that's how RoboKit always talked. He was programmed to talk relatively smoothly, except with a few default settings. There were occasions when he spoke louder, more abruptly, more in a lower pitched tone that was more severe, when he would speak slower or louder, or in a very slower, more pronounced way, or that he would project the voice into different directions too. He could do a number of those more serious talks that could be triggered off, reactivated on a number of occasions, if certain trigger words or trigger behaviours triggered off a reaction program within it. There were lots of these encoded programs that were written with such similar reaction simulations. So he could still be smooth talking and simulate the smooth talking when he was out. Whatever the new program would be out of sync with that behaviour though. But he would always carry on doing the smooth talk, however strange the situation might be outside. He might not recognise it actually was something serious, because it might not be one of the programmed and triggered serious reactions that was wired into his programming. So there was always the potential problem for that, Jaden had said. Those were the dangers with having a new kind of program installed. Not just that it seemed awkward and strange, out of character for actual Kit to do that, or for any of the personal humanoid programs. It would seem out of character for you, knowing them only from the personal programs, but also it could seem out of sync too with the other personal programs that could be running alongside it. If it was performing multifunctional programs in sync at the same time, then a new program could be out of sync with those, could not easily be adjusted to those sometimes, would be strange and unfamiliar to you, and also they wouldn't really be able to adapt all the time to new situations that couldn't be pre-programmed and understood beforehand. So it was always more risky if you didn't know what the new program was. You had to research it much thoroughly, in short, really, and had to know exactly what kind it was, and what type of simulated movement it was actually offering to do, and what its abilities to react to other movements around it were. Those were the critical things to know. Um, and what its limitations were. You could also read all its ratings and reviews, but those were all from another world, another place, unimaginable, really. So those were really from a place and time that experienced things very differently to us. So although you got good ratings and reviews elsewhere of the different humanoid products, of the new programs, never before tried out in virgin territory, but well experienced by others, there were so many different reviews in other places, often mixed with good and bad, and you get very different people's experiences of all different kinds, and a very general consensus that might emerge of a lot of people's general experiences, lots of trends when large numbers were rating and ranking and giving long, different, concise, worded, relevant kind of reviews and summaries that you could wade through. If you were really getting a serious program, any new program, you had to do that. You'd spend dozens and dozens of hours at least researching what were the potential viable drawbacks, what it actually did, its functional capacities, reactive abilities, what its adaptive simulating possibilities were, really what other users' feedbacks were, what other people's good and bad experiences were on it, really. But even then, that was all on other worlds and other places far away from one's own personal circumstances, one's own personal world. So it really it really said nothing about how the humanoid would actually function, or how the new product that could be installed into it, how that would function in your own personal world, in your personal experiences, in your own personal life. It said nothing about how that would be interpreted or adaptable within your own world, and what your own adaptability challenges would be with that. So, yeah, you had to get a sense of what the potential risks and benefits of the new programs for the humanoid was, but before you really went into venturing into trying to be and know your own adaptability skills to different kinds of new programming too, as well. So there's a lot to assess, really, a lot to consider on it all, really, before investing and forking out a huge sum of money on what a new program is. A complex program that can simulate a lot of sequenced, complex human behaviors and do those relatively well in sync with each other. Multifunctional, complex programming integrated and synced together, those things are really costly, and it actually takes a lot more time to do the adaptability courses, exercise training program. Make sure you've got the program manual well understood, you've got a concise understanding of it. All of it takes sometimes, the research and the learning and adjusting to it actually can take hundreds of hours sometimes on it. So it's more than just the money you're investing into it. It's a lot of your time and energy that you spend investing into it. But something like that can be used for a longer period of time. It can actually last you and support you, depending on how well it's used, how functional, how adaptable you are. It really can be functional and maintained for many, many years, potentially. It's very durable, it's robust, it needs little maintenance work. Many of them are lower maintenance. They are very low risk. And actually, what you'll find is it's very hard to damage the internal mechanism severely. Um, it would need to be something that was done almost deliberately, or something that was like really bad accident. If it had to be out on the road or something that bad, you've got to be careful with large, heavy machinery, like with anything really. But even then, with a collision with a large, fast, heavy machine, it could actually the actual internal mechanisms, those that are encased and protected in a metal seal, even then, those could actually be protected and secured still and survive it intact. So that's possible. But it would have still significant, superficial damage, and the cost would be pretty awful. And the damage on the humanoid would be too. So, you know, severe collisions, high-speed collisions with heavy kind of machines. Of course, like with any kind of object, you've got to be really careful with that. It's only those kind of real things that are a real risk to it. In a small fall over, like on a pavement or something, if it's just falling over on the ground from head height, then it's okay. Then it's actually going to have very little damage, less than a typical person would actually, because actually this particular synthetic skin that it has manufactured on it's kind of stretched, quite taut. It's quite firm. It's quite thick as well. It's very durable, and it's actually quite bouncy and absorbent. So it's very low maintenance. It's less likely to receive any tear. It actually will land and bounce off things a little, so it can normally just land on the ground and it won't tear or anything, unless it lands onto something at some speed with some force, or is pushed into something and it's something jagged, something sharp. Then it can tear, it can cut, and then it just needs sewing up, gelling up, and it's relatively simple to do that. You make sure that it doesn't sort of get pierced or anything in somewhere that's wet already. You know, but actually, if you're out somewhere, you don't go out when it's wet and raining. You're ill-advised to take him out somewhere that's rocky, and that's dangerous, and that if it's pouring with rain, if it's wet or something, you can take him out in the wet anyway, because that won't seep in, it won't absorb through the synthetic skin anyway, and it won't get into the internal mechanisms either. So that's all dried out from its internal heater, like I said. Young Jaden had explained it all, gone on a long sales pitch, almost as if he'd become one of the sales representatives, Molly thought, as if he was speaking, trying to encourage and implore her to take more interest and to consider herself as potentially getting a robot helper in the future, some robot comforter in her older years, a robot physiotherapist or something, in case she had a fall, an accident, or just in case for when she got elderly, Jaden suggested. Well, Molly said it's something perhaps she hoped it would never happen, of course, but she would perhaps consider thinking about that if the time had ever come when such a need developed. She hoped it never would, and Jaden reassured her. He certainly hoped she never needed a robot supporter or anything of the sort either. Surely, though, it was just there for a temporary thing, just while the needs were there, if it was a need. Jaden had talked about wanting to go out, take Robot Kit out to have a dance, to have a drunken dance sometimes, just for fun. Molly said, though, it wouldn't be funny to have him saying random things in the middle of the night. Surely, if he was saying random things, like with random programming, that was no better than a drunk if he did that. Because sometimes he could just do random things, and so that could be a bad thing, surely. Why were there all these random programs that he had, though? Surely Jaden was in control of when he did the program or not. But not necessarily if he was out and about in a place he didn't know. Because then RoboKit would react to something that was unfamiliar, something that was said or that was done in a way that his programs didn't recognize from a previous experience. So it was a real surprise sometimes if he went out somewhere that was new. As if Kit was somehow a person that was on trial. The trial of RoboKit. And Molly, after a respectful pause, had said, that was perhaps all true, yet neither would Kit surprise him with any lovely gestures, though. Yes, he did random things that shocked people when they were out, and maybe made them laugh a little bit, but he couldn't really know him personally well to really surprise him with a lovely gesture. Okay, he never stole anything from him, and never did a personal, horrible, mean reply to him. He never was personal in his physical or any of his verbal assaults. He was never abusive in any way. He was never rude personally to anyone, in fact, in that way. No, he didn't personally target anyone. And so there was a good thing in that, she acknowledged. Yet neither could he be personally complimentary. He could personalise his kindness. He couldn't do personalised acts of intimate love. No, not to Jaden, she said, almost as if reminding him of that. And not to anyone either. Couldn't really personalise any kind of friendship or any kind of personalised behaviour, surely. It would still be simulated behaviour, however nice and genuine and kind it all seemed to be and appeared to be. It would only really be appearances of that, surely, she'd said, still not sure that he was depending on young Robo-Kit as too much of a dependency, and if this wasn't perhaps some roboholism or something, whatever it was, if there were things like that. Well, perhaps he could be programmed to do or say random things or funny things out the blue, or just to do spontaneous dance, like a dance you knew well, because of course you know the program, but you didn't know when. You could program him to do it at a different time that you wouldn't know when he would do it or something. Or you could program him to say something, give one of his funny talks, his silly jokes, but to do it at a time you wouldn't expect. So you could do an unpredictable timing, a random timing with him. Even if it's a familiar program, yes. You could do a familiar program at a random time or random program, but at a familiar time. You've got to do the random programs when you're really familiar with it. That's really crucial because you don't want to do a random program at a random time. The worst thing you could ever do, said Jaden, seriously now, as if that was something he'd tried or considered and heard of others doing and heard of the bad experiences. If I do a random program, something I'm not familiar with, it's more experimental, it's something I'm just not sure with, then I'll try and do it when I'm alone or with others that I know well, those that are familiar with it. And when I'm familiar with the actual other programs, that Kit's doing, that the Humanoids doing, when I'm familiar with it and I'm familiar with where he is, I do it in the room, I'm alone, and I limit the number of other potential things that could go wrong. Because he could do some crazy things in his new program that I'm not expecting at all. Not crazy really, just something that's strange or different, out the blue. Something that's odd sometimes. All different kinds of things, really. Because I try out some of these new kind of small programs, just a few new exercises, a few new talks, a few new jokes. He'll give a few. You get a whole a new set of different subjects that he'll give a few different talks about. For the simulation talks, you could just choose a few subjects and that. But I try out those things. I do it alone in the room. The new simulation talks and new simulation action. The exercise too. Just until I'm comfortable and I get to know them, because I'm not sure. They're so strange at first. Until I get more familiar with them, then I'll know where I can go with it. What places I could do it around. Where it can be adapted to, what people would be okay with it, who would think it's kind of funny and a bit of a joke, and who would think it's a bit perverted and a bit strange, or that's just too weird, or I don't, some people would have some really odd, crazed ideas about it potentially. I think it would affect people. Some of the things he does or simulates doing, whatever, it would affect people differently, if I'm honest. Trailed off Jaden, giving his explanation about the new programs that he'd been trialing out on Robo-Kids. Well, what kind of weird, strange, or whatever things they are, what kind of strange things does he do then? Asked Molly, her curiosity now aroused again, but unsure. Unsure now if she ever would want such a thing. Surely you don't really want random talks or him talking or singing or even making random jokes at different times when you're not expecting it. You could do it at the wrong time. Well, it doesn't make that much difference to me when I'm at home a lot, in the room at home anyway. Yeah, sometimes it is a bit at the wrong time, but sometimes it's okay. It depends really. Yeah, I've just been trying that out, I suppose. Jaden, though, had shrugs about it all. That's not exactly what she meant, though, by surprising, spontaneous acts of love, by just having random programmed talks occasionally, or random jokes. Jaden, though, had shrugged, before drinking more of the fifth glass of wine, conceding that, of course, Robo-Kit still had his limitations in the relationship, and he did in his abilities to adapt to him still, or to it. He wasn't really around to replace other people, not at all, and certainly not as a long-term thing, never. only to really support him just until he could return to working and going out more again. And he could still be a complement even then when he returned to other relationships, a complement to his other human relationships to others, and not necessarily ever a replacement for them, but really just complementary, a human or humanoid that was complementary to other people and not a replacement of them. Molly had then gone on to apologise, feeling that she had perhaps criticised the object of Jaden's fascinations or his study or perhaps his desires. The only way maybe he could be spontaneously in caring or showing love would be if someone else also was co-programming RoboKit alongside me, if I had a programming partner, if we were co-creating together, you know. So if we were both doing the technical programming of RoboKit together, then that would be different. If I had a programming partner, we could work on RoboKit together. Yes, that would be different. That would be the only way that really he could show somehow more genuine. Or if there were a group, co-programmers programming RoboKit, then that would be the only way. I think it would happen. That's the only kind of real way you could have a spontaneity within RoboKit's program. Something that would, be out the blue for you. I can't imagine having a programming partner, but it's possible. I'm open to the idea of it. Well, don't look at me, said Molly Buttons, when Jaden had looked at her imploringly, with an open expression, though. She shrugged. I'm not technical enough. I'm not technophobic, she said, a little too loud, protesting. No, don't get me wrong. I'm not humanophobic, she said, struggling to pronounce it. It's not that. I don't have a fear of them. I don't have any desire either. I don't really know enough about it, really. And, well, I'm happy for you if you get something out of it. But, I'd rather not get too close involved in it. That's all, really. But I'm happy to sort of learn more about it. And I wouldn't know anything about it to program RoboKit or any other humanoid besides, said Molly, almost a little too defensively, though. No, I wasn't really asking you to. I just meant others in general. Anyone that likes programming, anyone that loves humanoids and is experimenting and trying to still learning with it, really. Especially someone who's more experienced, I suppose. Someone that could help me with it more and could teach me more, programming kit more. I didn't mean to ask you. I wasn't asking you especially. It's just something I've thought about, but I don't know. It's a personal thing with RoboKit, so I don't know that I'd want to invite someone else to sort of share the programming with Kit. I don't know. I hadn't thought about that really, not that much. But that's the only spontaneity that it is that he can do, that it could do potentially sometime. It has that option sometime, but I don't know. I haven't explored that much really. Explain, Jaden. Now wanting to go back to talk about other things. Now feeling that they've gone too far, he didn't really want to talk about the code programming with RoboKit, that he had thought about a little bit though. I really don't think that will ever happen. I just can't ever imagine it. I think most people would just think it's a personal thing you do alone, really. I can't see that you do the code robot programming together. Certainly, I would never do it in a group. I've always been monogamous anyway, added Jaden. But I'm open to it, but I don't know really. Well, I wasn't suggesting you do it or anything. I merely was wondering about whether it could do spontaneous things. But I guess if you're only programming alone with it, then no, it couldn't. I suppose it was an obvious question or an obvious answer, said Molly. No, I wasn't really asking about if you did code programming. I never even knew there was such a thing, really. Do other people do that? I mean, is that a big thing in the humanoidal world? Or Megatronians, or the others, whoever they are? Asked Molly, looking up, now confused, raising her eyebrows. Still really curious about it, not sure that she should be asking or wanting to know more. I don't know really. I think there are a lot of sort of couples that co-program, humanoids together. Yes, that is a big thing. I know a lot of people do co-program humanoids. Yes, but there are a lot of more people that actually just program humanoids on their own. It's mostly like a one-to-one thing. But there's a growing number of Megatronians that have couples that have humanoidal relationships. The humanoid is a big is a big part. Some of them have like a humanoid each, and some of them just have one they both use, but it varies. A lot of couples have used in Megatronian couples, and other further afield couples. I don't know all their names, but a lot of other people have used the humanoid. Some of them just use one humanoid in the relationship, and there are other couples that will use two. So they're called the quadrucouples, quadronians, and then the triling couples. So the Megatronians, that they have loads of different kind of humanoidal relationships. There are a lot of single people like me that just have, one to one. They're monogamous, either just with a person, or you know, I just have one humanoid that I had, RoboKit. That's all. Never had any other humanoids. Never. I only ever had RoboKit. And when I was with people, it was exactly the same. Funnily enough, always just was with one person, monogamous. But I know there are some Megatronites and others. The Optigites, the Pentadites, the Trigonites, oh, loads of the others too. I don't know all those names. I don't know half of them. If I've missaid them even. But you know what? A lot of them, they have different numbers. They're more polytheistic, really. They're monogamous. So they do have two or three different humanoids in their relationship, either with just alone, so they can have a couple of humanoids they're having a relationship with, one just for exercise or dance class, and then another one that they'll go out doing walking or shopping with, or different simulations with, and then they'll have another dance simulation humanoid. So they might have three humanoids. Had explained Jaden, giving his long explanation to Molly. There's loads of different kinds of personal relationships with different numbers of humanoids. But there are some Megatronites that are monotheistic as well. So they're rather than so they're less polytheistic, polygamous rather. They're less polygamous than monogamous. So they have multiple humanoidal partners. I only could ever have one. I'm happy with Kit. I am happy with Robo Kit, said Jaden defiantly, protesting, almost too much though. Are you really? I mean, I know for now you are. Now you're not able to go out, and for the last few months, where it's been more difficult, a trial to go out. Of course, yes, it's a temporary relief, and it's something assisting you to do a lot of different things. But eventually, you wouldn't be happy only with him, depending too much on him, would you? There could be a danger that you depend too much on Robo Kids, and then you have to be able to move on and sort of, when the time's right, to go out and see others more, have real conversations, not just simulated conversations, suggested Molly. Maybe it's something that you'll eventually be able to go out and do more when you're able to go out more. Well, I think maybe it has become a bit of a robot obsession, I suppose, finally confessed Jaden. And are you? I mean, are you obsessed by it? Do you feel you've got that robophilia? Is that what they call it? Robophilia? Roboholism, corrected Jaden, as if annoyed. It's just when you're addicted to using it too much. It doesn't mean it's bad in itself. No, I don't call it robophilia because it's not that I'm attracted only to humanoids or to just robo kits. I'm not just only attracted to him, or I'm attracted to people, of course. I do have spent a lot of time with RoboKit. I spent a lot of time with it, and it take up a lot of time understanding how to function in learning with him, adapting to him, understanding his programming, understanding how I can sort of adjust to maneuvering around it, and his movements, his simulations, because I have to do a lot of adjustments to it, even with the motion sensor. Yeah, I became a little obsessed with the amount of time that I spent working with it on the programs, like on the routines and the dances. I guess I've become a little obsessive with it. It's become a pet project in a way, I guess. Um, I would describe it as that though. Roboholism. That's what some of us go to a roboholic group. Because we become invested so much, spending so much of our time and energy, our thoughts on it as well as our time and our physical movements connected around it and adjusting, dancing with it, maneuvering it, changing it, adapting it, studying it, you know, touching it, kind of holding it, having to maintain it. I have to sort of somehow maintain it and wash it quite often. So I'm often kind of moving it around and kind of washing it with this special kind of cleansing wash rub that I use. So a lot of time I would spend a few hours a week, washing down Kit and sort of making sure that he moves okay. I have to do these exercises to keep metallic ligaments have to be kind of kept loosened out and stretched. So I do I suppose I spend a lot of time doing the exercises with him. I've never really had any interest over the years in humanoids. It just really emerged, and then I became spending loads amounts of my time, nearly all my time, a large amount of my time, just occupied with him. And once I met the simulator company, I began researching it and just spending a lot of time, hearing other people's stories, talking to other simulators, other robotic programmers. I was talking to other humanoid people that were in relationships with humanoids, different kinds of relationships though, loads of different kinds, reading their stories, blogs, posts, seeing different videos of their humanoids and them with their humanoids as well. I spent a couple of months before researching, reading, blogging, posting. I heard about lots of people in personal relations with humanoids, and so doing workouts with humanoids. I spent a lot of time and energy on it. Maybe I became a bit obsessed and spending too much time in doing it, I suppose. Well, I suppose you've been alone a lot of the time, and you were ill and cooped up alone at home a lot of the time. I gave you something to research and to study yourself, I suppose. Yes, you have been off a lot of the time, and alone with it too. Since you've been off work, said Molly, now with a more sympathetic smile, a half smile to her, not judging him so much now, feeling a little bad for some of her judgment and the questioning, but feeling that she wanted to know still what his real reasoning behind it was, though. In his poorer physical and perhaps even mental and social conditions, perhaps he was the desperate person, and he was really merely out of desperation, just depending on this robotic support, this robotic model that simulated different human movements. And perhaps if that helped support him in some ways, who was she to judge him on that? Though she still was a little suspicious and wary, wondering what and where it had gone to. How far had the simulation movements and the simulated relationships gone? How far had that developed? You won't tell anyone, though, at work, at the factory about it all, at the warehouse. You won't tell none of the colleagues, will you? Asked Jaden, suddenly, flicking over his eyes to the door, looking over to the corridor, the outside world, and then having a slightly worried expression on himself, seeing the empty glasses, seeing the washing laundry draped wet still in its basket, heaped on the floor, and seeing all the remnant and the mess of food that they dropped on the floor in eating snacks between glassing wine, and seeing also the dirty glasses, thinking over the outside world and its judgment, and what others would think of it all. Well, what's there to tell? Of course not. No. What should I tell people? You practice dancing. You do robot dancing with a robot. I'd like to tell people that I've seen my first humanoid, or I've seen the first humanoid dancing. I could have well seen humanoids before. Those that do the simulated walks outside or something, simulated marching or whatever it is. I think it's more simulated marching, really, isn't it? But they looked very formal, the ones I saw in the video. I don't think that I could have passed them and not noticed if they were. I could have seen a humanoid, but I just wouldn't have known that they were that. It's the first time I've knowingly seen a humanoid, at least. Maybe it's the first humanoid dancer I've seen, and that's a true enough thing. I mean, don't feel a great need to, and I don't have to tell anyone. No, if you don't want me to, I won't tell anyone. I mean, I can understand, she said, slurring her words a little drunkenly, looking over to the door as if she wanted to escape the conversation too at some point and move on perhaps from it and its embarrassing edges that it had sometimes to it, as if planning to go out at some point and lure off from it all. I can understand why you wouldn't want me to, and I won't. I won't tell anyone. If you'd rather I didn't, of course not. It's a personal thing, and it's your personal choice. I don't have to tell anyone. No one has any reason to know at all. And no one suggested anything about it, said Molly, hoping that would reassure him. Well, there is nothing else to tell. You're just prancing around, dancing with a robot, and there's nothing more to it than that, is there? Asked Molly. There's no crime to doing robot dancing, or escorting him out to a shop, or it escorting you out to the shop and back and carrying the things home. There's nothing wrong in that, especially. Certainly not a crime or anything. Even if people wouldn't understand, especially, trailed off Molly. No, of course not. There's nothing illegal. It's not a crime. It's certainly not, reassured Jaden. Confidently, he knew that, having studied it during the research into the humanoids. But you know what they're really like? Oh, the colleagues at work. It'll be another thing to laugh at me for. They just love all the mockery. They will love it. Yeah, I just don't want some of them to know. Not all of them, but a few of them. They will just love it and just laugh about it. It will be just too much ammunition for them. I don't want them to know. They laugh about me already, enough as it is. Oh, look, there's Lona Jaden doing robo dances at home with a robot. So sad. Has to dance with the robot. They'll probably call me Dances with Robots or something. I'll get one of those names that will taunt me for months on end. They'll be teasing me all over the canteen at work. No, you can imagine how some of them would overreact. It would just be one big laugh for them. Oh, come on, it wouldn't be that bad, really. After it would wear off, they'd get over it eventually. Yes, they'd laugh and find it odd. A few hours later, be something else. Someone else they'd be laughing at soon enough after a few hours or weeks, however long. Soon be something that Anyway, they wouldn't get to know anything much about the dancing. They've obviously heard about the comic jester dancers, everyone's seen those videos. They've gone viral, haven't they? The Joker humanoids. They're just doing the silly dances, though. I mean, that's not they won't know about that you're dancing. Your robo dancing serious, so they won't know the type of dancing or anything anyway. And tried to reassure Molly. Well, no one has to know anything if you don't tell them. And there's no reason that they should ever find out. I've only ever done the robo dancing with Kit at home. So there's no reason for them to know. Please, just don't tell them, because they don't need to know. I know most of them wouldn't care anyway. It would just be a funny thing, something. I know, but even if a few of them find out, I just don't want to be known as the robo dancer or whatever. And okay, said Molly, a little defensively. I will not tell them, she said, nodding her head. I promise I'll keep it to myself. You could just say it's there for the physiotherapy, a physiotherapy humanoid, and that would be, much more sympathetic. But I'll keep it to myself. You don't have to tell anyone. And I wouldn't tell anyone anyway. I knew some of the girls would be interested. They probably want to know about it too, in defiance of some of her colleagues at work. And I'm sure most of them would never laugh. Yes, but they laugh at anything anyway, don't they? Some of the crazier ones. Well, I don't know. They just laugh at everyone and everything. That's just their banter. They're like that with everyone anyway. Don't take any of that personal or serious. They will laugh at anyone about anything that seems a bit weird. And this is weird, but it's nothing that bad, isn't it, anyway? I don't think they'll hate you for it. They wouldn't think it terrible or anything. They wouldn't think you're awful doing it, but they would laugh about it, sure. They'd soon get over it. But anyway, no one has to know, like you said, reassured Molly Brown once more, now buttoning up her long coat, getting ready to leave. I'd rather it was just kept between us. There's just a lot of, robophobia going on out there. And, what with all the bad humanoids, they're not bad humanoids, they're bad experiments done with the humanoids, really. There's been lots of good experiments with the humanoids too. Everyone just focuses on all the bad ones. They're the ones that get popular, become sensational, just because a humanoid hurts someone or does something that, but they're so rare. It hardly ever happens. And most of the time, it's humanoids being hurt by others, actually. And they get a bad reputation for it. It's rare that ever a humanoid really hurts anyone. And usually it's always the programmer's fault or some accident, some mistake that happens. Very rare that you ever... But you see, those are the ones that are popular because they're sensational. They go viral. That's the only thing. But really, there's been so many good times, good experiments with the humanoids as well. Like people just learning with them, doing exercises with them, getting support with humanoid programs. But you don't hear about all those small kind of cases where people are just finding lots of little support with it because they're not just as sensational. So that they don't go viral, they don't make such interesting, alluring videos that are that attractive. And then so you don't hear about all the good robot humanoid experiences. You only hear about the sensational ones, where it goes wrong. They're rare, very rare. So you get a really distorted view from all the humanoid experiments, just from the sensational videos, the ones that go viral. You really got to search for the more educational humanoid videos. There's loads of humanoid resources out there. Lots of good, credible humanoid experiments, and loads of good humanoid videos, humanoid jogs, humanoid blogs and journals. Went on Jaden, a little drunk still, but wanting to explain that he had done a lot of research into it and had studied it all. So I can't take RoboKit out. No, there's too much robophobia out there because of all of that information. They're not really just bad experiments, but some of the ones that just went more wrong. And so people are more fearful, more wary of it because of those ones, even though they're not really aware of all the other good experiments or when things were relatively okay, modest, good outcomes that a lot of people had. A lot of people in the research said that I found, that had relatively good, robot experiences and robot partners. Um, so there were mixed experiences with many, but there's too much robophobia out there, especially here because it's so unknown. People at work, especially, I'd be smeared. Other people out there that have gone public about the humanoid relationships, they've all been smeared too. They're all called perverts, or some of them were. Others were just called delusional at best. That was the most that you could hope for. The few that went public and exposed themselves in the humanoidal relationship that they had, they were just called delusional, mentally ill, robophilia. What you said earlier, that's what they classified them as. They prescribed them with all these medications, all this behavioral therapy, all these courses that they're trying to get them to go on. They're coercing them to go on all these things as well. I don't want to do any of that. I don't want all the reconstructive therapy to try and make me more personal or something, to try and stop me. And that's what they're trying to do. Soon, when there's more humanoids, when it becomes a bigger thing, you see they're going to have all this robophobia and they're going to push all this anti-humanoid legislation. They will ban many more complex humanoids, and that means they're going to ban and then make illegal any person's personal relationships with humanoids too. They could criminalize it. I mean, it's something that could happen when more humanoids arrive here. The only reason they haven't done it, that they haven't criminalized it yet, I believe, is because there were just no humanoids yet here, because of the lack of humanoidal experience. Because all those humanoidal relationships and the humanoidal experiments, all of those are being done elsewhere, far from here. So it's a new technology here, something never done here. So there's no new laws here to adapt to it. There's no legislation proposed, even no discussion of it even yet, because there's so few of those advanced, complex humanoids that are in simulated relationships. So few, it's not worth just doing the legislation just for a small handful of people. But once it goes bigger, you see it'll be different. It was in other places when thousands of people, tens of thousands, started having humanoidal relationships and personal humanoidal relationships too. When tens of thousands started doing it, when it became more of a niche thing and widespread then in certain demographics, younger people, more mechanical people, certain groups of men, certain isolated people, lots of different groups that were drawn towards it, clusters of different people that were especially drawn towards it. They then grew these niche groups, and they had these whole subgroup communities that evolved, humanoid groups, and there's loads of them. But then all the laws, the regulations and restrictions about where and when the humanoids could go to, they were all enacted, and there's loads of those. There's so many. But because there were suddenly hundreds and then thousands of the humanoids, and the people having humanoidal relationships too. So here there's still so few of the humanoids. So I don't know if the robophobia has grown that much, but because they know about the bad experiments, with the humanoids elsewhere, because those have made the news greatly. And so I think the robophobia, sorry, has grown a lot since then. Yeah, because people are just aware of the bad things that the humanoids did, and that sometimes people did to humanoids too. And they just haven't seen all of the research or watched all the videos about all the good experiences with humanoids. All the comforter humanoids, the physiotherapy humanoids, not to mention the dancing humanoids. Well, you've seen RoboKit's dancing program, but all the other ones too. There's lots, and not just walking humanoids that can support you too. There's the wheeling, driving humanoids, loads, a whole variety of different ones. People haven't seen so much about their beneficial potentials. So there's too much robophobia to go out with it. I'd be smeared if they found out. I'd be a laughing stock. I would be. That some of them would react like that at least. Even if the others, they wouldn't know how to react because it's so new. Perhaps, yeah, they'd laugh at first, but how would they react afterwards, knowing it months down the line? Well, perhaps, yeah, some would laugh, but yes, the joke would wear thin eventually, and it couldn't be kept going for months on end, so it would just be one of those weird things. A robot training program that seemed to sort of also incorporate a dance or something. I suppose they just accept it and trailed off Molly. But why? Why would they be concerned? Would they be concerned? Like you said earlier on, some people wouldn't laugh, they'd be concerned. Yes, I think some people, not just colleagues, if they found out about the robo dancing, they might be concerned for you, and rather than just finding it funny, I guess, said Molly. Yeah, but I don't understand why. That's what I'm saying. Why would they be concerned? For what? He can't hurt me. It's not doing anything that I don't ask it to. It's just doing what I've asked it to. They've got their own ideas about what robots are or what robot mechanized simulation programs are. They haven't probably experienced with it. They haven't probably simulated with it. They probably don't know what having a relationship with a humanoid is. They probably don't know what a humanoid simulator is anyway, or what its different functions could be. These people are probably just watching RoboCop, I don't know, or Terminator. They've just seen robo killers or, robo marchers, robo cars that just wheel around this place, bleeping at people to get out of the way. They've just seen hard, blunt robots who are just hardcore, who are just edgy and just push people out of the way or drive past people without taking notice of them, bleep things at people. They've never seen a soft, smooth talking, human simulated robot program. They've never probably heard, never mind experienced such a thing as that. So they wouldn't know what it was. They've only got their ideas of what a humanoid would be. They think of just RoboCop or Robo Hunter or Robo Driver, those sort of things. That's what their idea is, and not Robo Carer, Robo Dancer, or the Robo Comforter, or they don't think of it as that. So they've got their own prejudice, their own biased ideas. They think it's some bad thing, like RoboCop's out to get me or protect you or defend you from others with his robo gun or something, or some robo machine who's just going to hurtle you at great speeds round the place. But actually, they don't think of it as being a robo physio or robo therapist or robo carer. They don't see the positives. They just see the risks of it, really, because of all the robo drivers that have knocked people down sometimes or hurt people in collisions. They're thinking of all the bad robot simulations that sometimes hurt people, but they're not seeing all the great potential. They don't think of robo carers, robo physiotherapists, robo dancers. And yes, you've said all that. You're repeating yourself, my dear, said Molly Buttons. Now, sitting straight-laced herself, preparing to leave, sitting straight upright. You've said all that. You've convinced me that you feel there's a need to it, at least. Okay, don't overdo it. I get it. You've sold it to me that you feel you're getting some use out of it, and that some other people could be too. I don't know. You're the one doing it. How do I know? I don't know what other people think about it. Potentially, yes. I think of robots as being hard and as just being functional and not gentle, and not really supportive in a gentle way. I think of them as being something that works. And yes, I think of them in the limited ways you said. I've never really thought of a robo carer in that way, and I've never seen a robo dancer. Certainly, never someone dancing with it, doing the simulated dance. I never saw a simulated dance before, not in that way, admitted Molly. But it's really only doing what you program it to do, isn't it, though? So I guess you wouldn't really hurt yourself with it then, because you'll know and be familiar with the program you're adapting to, suggested Molly. No, and I begin on the slow settings of the program. You can alter them, you can speed them up, you can have them on much slower, um, and also you can vary. So you can have a number of different programs, mini programs, that you can vary the sequence order of, so that you can shuffle them into all different kind of kaleidoscope of different kind of orders. And so actually, yeah, you can have different random orders, any sequence kind of orders as well. So you can specify a particular type of sequencing you want done, of miniature simulation programs that will be ordered, the tens and hundreds of them sometimes, very miniature movements, micro movements that are then ordered in a variety of different ways. So it spices things up, it makes it more entertainment because you can then do a random shuffle. Although you'll know the different movements that the dance is going to simulate, but you won't know quite sometimes the orders. So you just go with it sometimes when sometimes there's a random move and you think, and then you could do it on a slower setting or really long. You could change the speed setting and have it much slower down or speed it up during the random shuffle simulation dances. So that's a way to make the dance simulations more interesting that I do sometimes, just to keep each dance simulation different. So it's never fully repetitive. It's kind of a little different each time because I don't know the sequencing random shuffle order that it will do. But so that sort of keeps it kind of different for me, keeps me entertained, keeps me on my toes, keeps me having to react to it as well. To react to the shuffle program, I mean, that's what I got to do. But I have to do it on a very slow one when I'm not with it. I'm not most of the time. Confided Jaden. Is it just the dancing, even the shuffle dancing? I mean, that sounds more interesting than just boring, routine, kind of just the same thing ad nauseum. Yes, if you could do the shuffle programming, that makes it a little more interesting, something at least. But is it just the dancing that you're doing with it? Is that really it? Finally asked Molly, preparing to go, but just wanted to ask one last time, pushing him again. Jaden again hesitated, delaying. Well, okay, he does also have a program massage ability as well, that he does. It's an extension, a part of the physio program. So he simulates a sort of back and shoulder massage. He just does simple techniques of really, with the hands. So he was able to do that. And there's nothing more to it than that. So it's just he can massage at different areas of the body, I suppose. Yes, yeah, but there's a limited number of different types of massage because it's only a limited massage program actually. So it really only fits as adapted to around the actual shoulders and at the top of the back and around that area. That's where I had some of the pain on that side, and then he does down to one side with one hand on the torso. Um, so then I had to sort of adapt some of the sort of another program of just to sort of do a small massage of that area, but it's mostly just the back and shoulders massage because it's a quite deep massage that it does, a very specific massage program. It's relatively good because it's long and you do like 20-30 minutes bursts of it a few times a day. I take a couple of days off a week if it gets tiring and it can put a strain on it. But I can adjust and move my shoulders a little, and I can adjust the functions on the setting of it, so I can do a deeper kind of setting of it, or more shallower massage, or one that's longer or shorter, or over a larger area, or just focusing on a smaller, between the shoulder blades, or actually around the neck sometimes. So I do sort of the neck, the shoulders, the back, and it's just got a simple massage program. I didn't say I have been to physiotherapists many years ago. My aunt was a physiotherapist. I learned a lot of techniques from her. She used to sort of do physio on my neck. I did it on her too. She taught me so that I could do it for her as well at the time. That's why I learned some simple techniques also. So I was able to recognize Kit's simple massage program, that he simulated something similar. Um, so I went to my auntie, who was a physiotherapist. I met other physios through her. And I would say, no, Kit is not as good as other real human physios. It's not quite as good because he can't really adapt the physio program as much as you'd want. You could do minor small adaptations. You can adjust it a little bit so that it will change the next time and the times after that. If you want it to go, push it. If you wanted to move the fingers a little different ways, you can make subtle different variations and gradually refine it. You do it multiple times, but it can't actually do any kind of spontaneous change or anything. Of course, it's never as good as a person. It's not reactive in that sense, but it's fairly good. It's okay. It's average actually, and it's better than some people would do anyway. It doesn't hurt. It just puts a little strain and pressure and massage. It just heats up those little areas of the muscle that it moves, and it moves the fingers gently around, pushing different particular areas. It's not exacting and precise always either. So if you're looking for something to be very, very specific, like in getting acupunctural points or something, or to touch a very specific little area, it can't be exacting. The fingers move around. It does sort of specific movements. You could change the type of movements, how many fingers, or how fast, or where they're moving, or what area they're moving around, how wide you want them to move in circles, or how big you want the circles. So there are loads of different things, dozens of little changes you can make, and you can sort of vary it. So it is adaptable up to a point. Yeah, it's not as good as a professional, a real physiotherapist, not at all. But it is hard to actually reach that area of your body. It's hard to sort of massage your own shoulders. It would be hard to stretch your hand, wouldn't it, behind your back and to massage your own back. So it's sort of better than not having it at all. It does provide a little stimulation. It heats up that muscle area, and so that helps to increase the circulation of the blood within that. That's the reason for doing it, to help to sort of produce and increase the circulation, really, and just to sort of stimulate some heat there, just for 30-40 minutes. And I just do a session or two every day, and I do it most days, really. So he has that massage program within him. That's been very useful too. The massage program, for the shoulders and the upper back and around the neck area, I can adapt that a little bit, and it doesn't really hurt at all, really, because it's never that too deep. He's never really pushing in, or pushing in and hard. Never too much. No, he's very soft and gentle, and only presses in gently anyway. So it's a relatively good, massage program. There's a lot better ones out there available too, but as a basic, simple one, it's been okay. It's done the job, really, and it helps to keep certain parts of the body, those muscle areas, when I'm less active to move them much myself. It helps to stimulate the heat when I'm not able to generate it through doing physical exercises sometimes. And he stimulated the heat on the legs in the early stages, by doing the leg massages more, just because I couldn't circulate the blood. I couldn't move the legs, and I couldn't move parts of the body so much. So he would generate heat, stimulating it by massaging with the simulation movements. So that was good too. I mean, it helped to increase the circulation, because it was like a simulation of a physical workout. The movement was sort of just giving a little heat, a little warmth. So it kind of was almost like a simulation of the physical exercise, explained Jaden. So yeah, well, I get the reason that you'd want to do that. That's something, I suppose. I can understand the physiotherapy benefit of the need, even if it's not a great massage. Yes, it's not the same as a physiotherapist who's professionally trained. No, it wouldn't be. But I suppose it's better than not having it at all if you couldn't reach some of the areas, or you didn't feel well enough to. Exactly, said Jaden in answer to her. I did feel unable to, and I was just too out of it. I was in a lot of pain, a lot of medication, and so it would be difficult for me to do and maintain a lot of those massages for a long time, and to do that regularly. Yes, it was very good for me in that sense.